If we're honest, we've all hit a fat iron shots in the time that we've played golf. How do you kind of fix it? How do you get it out of your game? Well, I'm going to show you a really simple set of processes that you can go through to start to strike it better, and it should actually be really quite simple. And we're going to finish up with a kind of change in mindset, which makes everything that we're going to do in this video kind of make sense and actually allow you to take it to the course. Without that part, it's going to be really difficult. So what is a fat golf shot? Well, it's effectively when you hit the ground before the golf ball. So we're playing all of our shots bar the tee shot when the ball is on the ground. The key thing with golf is your golf club has to make contact with the ground. That's the first part. So if you're hitting the ground early, part of what you're doing is correct. You're hitting the ground. It's just too early. So the last thing you want to do is ever think to yourself, I've got to miss the ground, because all great players hit the ground. What we've got to do in this video is give you simple tips to help you hit the ground in the right place, which is just after the golf ball. So what do great players who strike the ball well have that potentially you don't? Well, they generally have in the downswing more lag. They hold on to this angle for longer, which enables them to get the hands in front of the golf ball and deliver the club later into the ground. If you're fatting it, there's a very, very good chance that you don't have that lag stored up. So why is that? Well, what happens when you hit poor iron shots? What happens when you stand there and you hit a fat shot and you do it again and again, and you do it over a couple of rounds of golf? You start to get quite nervous. You start to get quite apprehensive about the shot. And what happens then is you start to tense up in your grip, and you start to tense up through here. And the number of golfers that I've coached over the years who say things to me like, I'm trying to just stay a bit stiller over the golf ball. I'm just trying to move less. I'm just trying to remove the things that are moving in my golf swing. That's terrible, because what happens when you start to tense up and you start to limit what your body does is you make golf swings where you're really stiff. And if you're really stiff, you're never going to create any of that lag. You're never going to hold it on the way down, because you're not actually creating it in the backswing. So if I locked my legs in place, I didn't really move my weight, didn't really rotate, my hands are stiff, I'm almost always going to start landing the club into the ground before the ball. So this is your first exercise. I call this the kind of floating drill. Take a setup, okay? Hover the golf club above the ball, grip pressure nice and light, and I want you to just feel like as you change in direction from backswing to downswing, you're gonna make the grip and the hands move towards the ball as the club head is still moving away. So that would look like this. As we get to here, we start to get the grip to go to the golf ball as the club head starts to still go away. You've got to have a super light grip pressure to do this. And chances are, for many of you, this will feel pretty strange. The idea here would be to do this continuously for about 5 or 6 motions. And as you're doing it over those 5 or 6 shots or swings, you're trying to make the grip pressure reduce and reduce and reduce. So I'm going to kind of show you an example of what might happen when someone does this. They start off and it's quite stiff this way, and then as we say, kind of relax, relax, we start to get towards something that looks a little bit like this. What you can do, just for contrast, flip the club around, hold it right here, and just feel how much more difficult that would be. Because we don't have the weight down at this end, it feels really quite difficult to get that same sort of movement to happen. As soon as we've got weight and we can feel that weight, it suddenly feels much easier. Okay, and that's why it's key that we have our grip pressure nice and light, because the tighter you hold it, the less aware you are of the weight. That's your first exercise. Now, there's no reason why, if you felt comfortable doing that, there's no reason why you couldn't go ahead and hit a little shot. This isn't going to go anywhere near that green, but you should start to see that movement that we're talking about, and that allows me to land the club in the right place. Even though that's only gone 40 yards through the air, the strike felt pretty good and I landed the club in the right place. Right, second little exercise. If you're looking to land the club somewhere different, i.e. later, closer to the ball, which you do need to do if you're hitting it fat, you have to control the club going down and the body rotating. The two have to happen. The blend of that is what's ultimately going to control where you land the club. Let me explain what I mean. I'm going to do this inside the golf ball, but I want you to imagine obviously where that golf ball is, and I want my club to land pretty much in line with that ball. So let's say we've made a really nice backswing, we've got our nice wrist set, we're nice and relaxed, we've got some body turn. Watch what would happen if I just let my arms drop to the ground and release the angles in my arms and my hands. the club will hit the ground. The club's going down. I can use gravity if I want to use that, but essentially the club is going to go down to the ground, and it's always going to land way, way, way before the golf ball. Okay, that's always going to happen. So this is your first little drill. Let the club drop, you're going to hit the ground. So how do we stop it from hitting the ground here? We blend our rotation. So watch what happens as I start to let the club drop, and then add in my rotation. Suddenly the club still hit the ground, but it was later. That's really, really key, because think about what the club is doing from the top. Your arms are basically adding in the downward part of your downswing. The body rotation controls the outward part and also the forward part. That's really key. So you can start to this as an exercise. And what I would actually have you do is take a peg, a tee. I'm going to move the wallet away so you can actually see that. That's going to be where I kind of have my reference as the golf ball. And I'm going to set up to that tee. I'm going to make my nice relaxed swing, and I'm just going to let my arms move the club down towards the ground. I'm feeling I'm just letting my arms drop, club's hitting the ground early, and then I'm just going to start to add my body turn and collect the tee. Now, did you see me rush that? Did you see me search for the ball? Did you see me try and drive the handle down? None of those things. All I did is I let the club drop and I added my body rotation to blend those two together and land it in the right place. So there's a bit of practice there. There is a bit of timing, a bit of skill, a bit of coordination that has to happen. So it's something you need to practice. That drill's brilliant for that. So what is our third point before we kind of touch on that kind of final point, which is kind of knit everything together? Well, it kind of links into our second point nicely. Great players who strike it well generally have the handle further forward. If you're fatting it, your handle is probably in line, if not back of the golf ball. So if I took a setup here, took my left hand of the club, I'm going to try and get this club as close to vertical as I can. Watch what happens to that golf club when I shift my weight onto my lead side. Doesn't really move, does it? Because as I shift my hips forwards, it's not really influencing my upper body. Okay? We need those hands forwards. When we look at great players who strike it well, their upper body, so their kind of chest or torso, is pretty square at setup, and at impact, it's always slightly open. Okay, so you can see it's rotated towards the target. So watch what happens now if I just cradle the club in my lead hand, add in my weight shift, which does need to be there, that doesn't move the grip, but then add a bit of rotation through my hips, bit of rotation through my chest. Well, now, suddenly that rotation is moving my lead arm. It's moving it towards the target. If I'm holding the club, that means the grip will be closer towards the target. And the more we can get the handle forwards, the later you should start to hit the ground. So our last point is don't be afraid to rotate through and finish towards the target. Simple ideas like trying to get your chest at impact to point in front of the golf ball. Okay, so many golfers who fat it are going to have their chest pointing back behind the golf ball. Look how close my shoulders are here relative to where they were at setup. We've got to get these shoulders turning. If we turn, we land the club much later. So we've got to be relaxed. We've got to blend the down and the rotation, and we've got to turn our chest onto it. If we do those things, we should be able to strike it, and then we're going to cover that last point, which is really, really key. Let's go ahead and see if we can do this. Bit of pressure on this one now. So let's come on to our last point. All of those things that we've spoken about should help, but it's not going to help if this thing gets in the way. Okay, what do I mean by that? Let's take a club with more loft. Pitching wedge. Why does the ball go in the air? One reason only, and that is because the golf clubs that you use are built with loft. So your job as the golfer is to make the ball contact the lofted part of the club. If that happens, you will get height. That's the only reason you get height. What we don't want you to do is ever think that you have to create the height. Because when that happens, you start to bottom the club early, you start to lean back, and that's where the fat shots come from. So think about this. If I've got all those things, I've done those little exercises that we've just gone through, I've practiced them. And if I stand there and my brain is telling me that I've got to lift this ball in the air, I'm suddenly going to start to fat it. Club landed early because my brain tells me I've got to get the ball in the air. That's not the case. The reason I grab pitching wedge is because I want you to do this exercise. This is a great little drill to get you to trust the loft. Take a lofted club. Pitching wedge is fine. Little narrow stance, lean left. Head's gone forwards, weight's gone forwards, hands gone forwards. This is a drill, this is not a full goal swing. I'm just going to go from here, add a bit of turn, and let the club hit the ground. Turn, hit, turn, hit, turn, hit. Everything that I'm doing there feels this way, down. That's the complete opposite to what many golfers are feeling. But watch what happens as I do that. We get height. I'm trusting the loft on the golf club. That's so key, because if you don't trust the loft, you're always prone to a fat shot because you're going to be trying to lean back and help the ball in the air. Don't do that. Trust the loft on the golf club, follow those 3 steps, and you'll start to strike it better.